The bullet that kills you isn't the one you hear. It's the one you never see coming. But Kenneth Valenti saw this one coming from a mile away. He sat in the corner booth of the rundown diner, watching the reflection of the black SUV in the rain-slicked window, and he didn't reach for his gun. He just lifted his coffee cup. He was tired of running, tired of the blood, and tired of the crown that felt more like a noose. He was ready to die. He took a sip, waiting for the glass to shatter. Instead, he felt a small, calloused hand grip the back of his neck and slam his face into the formica table just as the window exploded. He wasn't dead, and the waitress shaking above him wasn't serving pie anymore. She was reloading a Glock 19 she had pulled out of her apron. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. It was 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of night where the city felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Kenneth Valenti sat in the back booth of Louis' All Night Eats, a place that smelled permanently of burnt bacon and floor wax. He was the don of the Valenti crime family, a man who controlled shipping lanes from Vancouver to San Diego. Yet here he was, staring at a chipped mug of black coffee. He wore a tailored Italian suit that cost more than the building he was sitting in, but the collar was unbuttoned and his tie was loose. At 42, Kenneth looked 10 years older. The grey at his temples wasn't from age. It was from survival. "More coffee, hon?" Kenneth looked up. The waitress stood there, holding a pot with an orange rim. Her name tag read Sasha. She was small, perhaps in her late 20s, with messy brown hair tied back in a hurried bun and dark circles under her eyes that spoke of double shifts and unpaid rent. She looked like 1,000 other women in this city, invisible, overworked and tired. "No," Kenneth said, his voice rough like gravel. "Just the check, please. Actually, keep the change." He slid a $100 bill onto the table. Sasha looked at the bill, then at him. Her eyes, a striking shade of amber, narrowed slightly. She didn't smile. She didn't thank him profusely. She just looked at the money as if it were a trap. "You expecting trouble, mister?" Sasha asked, her voice low. Kenneth gave a dry, humorless chuckle. "Trouble found me a long time ago, Sasha. Tonight I'm just stop running from it." He looked past her out the window. The streetlights flickered against the wet pavement. A black Escalade rolled slowly to the curb, extinguishing its headlights. Kenneth knew that car. He knew the men inside. It was Victor Moretti's crew. Victor, his underboss, the man he had treated like a brother, had finally made his move. Kenneth had no backup. He had left his phone in a trash can 3 blocks away. He had dismissed his bodyguards. This was a suicide by proxy. He was done fighting a war that had taken his father, his brother, and his soul. "You should go to the kitchen," Kenneth said softly, not looking at her. "Stay down. Don't come out until the noise stops." Sasha didn't move. She tracked his gaze to the window. She saw the heavy doors of the SUV open. She saw the silhouettes of 3 men stepping out into the rain, the distinct long shapes of suppressors attached to their weapons. Any normal civilian would have screamed. They would have dropped the coffee pot. They would have frozen. Kenneth closed his eyes. "Make it quick, Victor," he thought. Right in the head. He heard the bell above the diner door jingle. He took a breath, waiting for the impact. Instead, the world tilted violent sideways. Sasha didn't scream. She moved with a terrifying, silent efficiency. She didn't just push him. She hooked her leg around the booth's bolted-down leg for leverage, grabbed Kenneth by the back of his collar, and yanked him downward with the force of a hydraulic press. Crack thwip. The window where Kenneth's head had been a second ago shattered, spider-webbing into 1,000 diamonds. A bullet buried itself into the red vinyl of the booth seat, exactly at head height. Kenneth hit the linoleum floor hard, the air knocked out of him. Before he could process the indignity of being tackled by a waitress, Sasha was on top of him, not in a panic, but covering him. "Stay down," she hissed. The tone wasn't a request, it was an order. Kenneth looked up, dazed. Sasha wasn't looking at him. She was on one knee, peeling back the front pocket of her grease-stained apron. Beneath the order pad and the pens, there was a holster clipped to her waistband. She drew a subcompact pistol. Her grip perfect, her finger indexing along the slide until she was ready. "What the hell?" Kenneth started. "Shut up," she snapped. Two men in trench coats burst through the door, weapons raised. They expected a sitting duck. What they got was a chaotic kill zone. Sasha didn't hesitate. She popped up from behind the booth, fired 2 controlled shots, and ducked back down. Bang! Bang! The lead gunman grunted, clutching his shoulder, spinning into a display of stale donuts. "Back door!" Sasha yelled, grabbing Kenneth's expensive jacket and hauling him up. "Move your ass suit, Kenneth Valenti." The man who made mayors tremble scrambled on his hands and knees through spilled coffee and shattered glass, following a waitress who was currently suppressing fire against 3 professional hitmen. This wasn't how he planned to die. In fact, for the first time in years, the adrenaline flooding his veins told him something else entirely. He wanted to live, just to find out who the hell this woman was. The kitchen of the diner was a narrow corridor of stainless steel and sizzling fat. The cook, a teenager named Leo with headphones on, was staring blankly at the grill, oblivious to the gunfire in the dining room, until Sasha kicked the swinging door open. "Leo, out! Now!" Sasha screamed, shoving Kenneth past the prep station. "What my shift isn't!" A bullet punched through the swinging door's porthole window, shattering the glass over the deep fryer. Leo shrieked and scrambled toward the heavy metal delivery door at the back. Kenneth's instincts finally rebooted. He wasn't armed, but he was still dangerous. He grabbed a heavy cast-iron skillet from a drying rack. "They're flanking," Kenneth growled, his voice steadying. "The alleyway. They'll have a driver waiting." Sasha glanced at him, her eyes wild but calculating. "I know. We aren't going out the back door." "What?" "The walk-in," she said, pointing to the massive silver door of the refrigerator. "Are you insane? It's a dead end." "Just get in." The door behind them burst open again. A gunman, the one Sasha had winged in the shoulder, stumbled in, raising a suppressed MP5. Kenneth didn't think. He hurled the cast-iron skillet like a discus. It connected with a sickening crunch against the gunman's wrist. The gun skittered across the tile floor. Sasha fired once, center mass. The gunman dropped. "In!" she yelled, shoving Kenneth into the freezing air of the walk-in fridge. She followed him and slammed the heavy door shut, throwing the latch. Darkness swallowed them, save for the dim blue light of the temperature gauge. It smelled of raw meat and onions. "Great," Kenneth panted, leaning against a shelf of lettuce crates. "Now we freeze to death before they blow the hinges off." "Brilliant plan, Sasha." Sasha ignored him. She holstered her weapon and moved to the back wall of the fridge behind a stack of milk crates. She began kicking at the bottom paneling. "This building used to be a speakeasy in the 20s, she grunted, kicking hard. The owner was too cheap to seal the runner's tunnel properly. He just put the fridge in front of it. Crunch. The wood gave way. A draught of dank, earthy air flooded the sterile cold of the fridge. "You're full of surprises," Kenneth murmured, watching her crawl into the hole. "Less talking, more crawling," she called back. Kenneth squeezed his broad shoulders through the gap. They dropped down into a crawl space that barely allowed them to stand hunched over. It was wet, filled with cobwebs, and the scuttle of rats, but it was a way out. Above them, muffled thuds vibrated the ceiling. The hitmen were breaching the fridge. "Move," Sasha whispered. She took the lead using a small penlight she produced from her pocket. They moved in silence for 10 minutes, navigating the labyrinth of the city's forgotten infrastructure. Kenneth's mind was racing, her grip on the gun, the way she cleared the jam on the door, the knowledge of the exit. "Who do you work for?" Kenneth asked, his voice echoing slightly in the tunnel. "Moretti wouldn't send a woman to save me just to kill me later." "The Russians? The Triads?" Sasha stopped abruptly. She turned the beam of her light, blinding him for a second, before she lowered it. "I work for minimum wage, plus tips Mr. Valenti," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "And you owe me a really big tip. You know my name. Everyone knows who Kenneth Valenti is in this neighborhood. You own half of it. Civilians don't carry Glocks and shoot center mass," Kenneth countered, stepping closer. The space was tight. He could smell the faint scent of vanilla soap beneath the diner grease on her. "You moved like a soldier." Sasha hesitated. For a second, the tough veneer cracked, revealing a flash of panic. Not fear of the gunmen, but fear of being seen. "I grew up rough," she said dismissively, turning back around. "Let's go. This tunnel comes out in the basement of the laundromat on 4th Street. Kenneth didn't buy it. But right now she was his only lifeline. They emerged into the humid, soapy air of a commercial laundry basement. Sasha forced a rusted hatch open, and they spilled out into the alleyway behind the building. The rain was coming down harder now, a torrential sheet that obscured vision. "My car is 3 blocks east," Kenneth said, assuming they haven't rigged it. "We aren't taking your car," Sasha said, wiping rain from her eyes. She pointed to a beat-up, rusted 1998 Honda Civic parked near a dumpster. "We're taking mine. It's invisible." "That," Kenneth said, eyeing the vehicle with disdain, "is a lawnmower with doors." "It's a getaway car," she corrected. She unlocked the door and threw herself into the driver's seat. Kenneth got in the passenger side. His knees hit the dashboard. The car smelled of old French fries and pine air freshener. Sasha turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died. Kenneth looked at her. "Invisible lawnmower." "Shut up," she hissed, pumping the gas pedal. "Come on, baby. Not today." She turned the key again. The engine roared to life with a noisy exhaust leak. Sasha threw it into reverse, whipping the car out of the alley just as a pair of headlights swept across the brick wall where they had been standing seconds before. She drove like a maniac, weaving through traffic, running red lights with calculated risks. She checked her mirrors constantly. "Where are we going?" Kenneth asked, gripping the "Oh Jesus" handle above the door. "I have a place," Sasha said. "Off the books. Safe." "I have safe houses," Kenneth said. "Penthouses. Bunkers." "And Victor knows where all of them are," Sasha said, cutting him off. "He's your underboss, right? He knows your protocols. He knows your passwords. He probably knows what you eat for breakfast." Kenneth fell silent. She was right. Victor knew everything. That was the tragedy of betrayal. It never came from enemies, only from friends. "Why?" Kenneth asked quietly, watching her profile as she navigated the wet streets. Why did you save me? You could have hidden in the kitchen. You could have let them take me." Sasha tightened her grip on the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. She didn't look at him. "Because," she whispered, almost too quiet to hear over the rain and the rattling engine, "I know what it looks like when a man gives up, and I wasn't going to let them slaughter you while you sat there feeling sorry for yourself." She took a sharp left heading toward the industrial district, the part of the city where the streetlights were broken and the shadows were long. "Besides," she added, her voice hardening again, "if Victor Moretti takes over the city, the rent goes up, and I can barely afford my apartment as it is." Kenneth studied her. It was a lie. A clever, deflected lie. Sasha Bennett was a puzzle wrapped in a diner apron, and for the first time in a decade, Kenneth Valenti felt the thrill of the chase. Not for power, but for the truth. But as the adrenaline faded, Kenneth felt a warm wetness spreading on his side. He looked down. His white shirt was stained crimson. "Sasha," he said, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. "What? I think they grazed me." Kenneth's vision blurred. The neon signs of the city smeared into long streaks of light. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was Sasha's terrified face leaning over him as she slammed on the brakes. Pain was a familiar old friend to Kenneth Valenti. It tasted like copper and felt like war. When he woke, the fire was concentrated in his left side, a burning lance that throbbed with every beat of his heart. He wasn't dead. That was the first surprise. The second surprise was the smell. It didn't smell like a hospital. There was no antiseptic bite of bleach. Instead, it smelled of dust-old paper and lavender. Kenneth cracked his eyes open. The light was dim, coming from a single lamp with a heavy shade in the corner of the room. He was lying on a leather sofa that had seen better days, stripped to his waist. His expensive shirt was ruined, cut open, and tossed in a pile of bloody rags on the floor. "Don't move," a voice commanded from the shadows. Sasha stepped into the light. She had shed the grease-stained apron. She wore a tight black tank top and grey cargo pants, now her hair loose and damp, framing a face that was scrubbed clean of the diner's grime. Without the waitress uniform, she looked different, harder, leaner, dangerous. She held a curved needle and a spool of black thread. "The bullet went through," she said, her voice clinical and detached. "Clean entry and exit just above the hip bone. Took a chunk of oblique muscle but missed the gut and the kidney. You're lucky, Valenti. An inch to the right and you'd be bleeding out internally." Kenneth tried to sit up, but a wave of nausea slammed him back down. He gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead. "Where are we?" he rasped. "My apartment," Sasha said. She sat on the edge of the coffee table, pulling a tray of instruments closer. Scalpel forceps gauze a bottle of high-proof vodka. "It's in the Ironsides district. Nobody comes here unless they're looking to buy meth or hide a body." "You're stitching me up." Kenneth eyed the needle. "Do you have a medical license to go with that Glock?" "I have training," she said briefly. She poured vodka over her hands, then over the wound. Kenneth hissed, his back arching off the leather. "Katso, breathe," she ordered, pressing a clean towel against the raw flesh. "I have lidocaine, but I'm saving it for if things get worse. You'll have to grit your teeth." She began to stitch. Her hands were steady, her movements precise and practiced. There was no hesitation, no shaking. These were not the hands of a woman who served pancakes for a living. These were the hands of someone who had put people back together or taken them apart many times before. Kenneth watched her face as she worked. She was focused, her brow furrowed slightly. He noticed a scar running along her hairline, faint and white, usually hidden by her bangs. "You're not a waitress," Kenneth said through gritted teeth as the needle pierced his skin. "I am a waitress," she corrected, not looking up. "I punch a clock, I take orders, I deal with rude customers who don't tip." "You cleared a jam on a Glock 19 in under a second," Kenneth countered. "You moved tactically, you checked corners, and you have a suture kit in your living room." Sasha tied off a knot and snipped the thread. She sat back, wiping her hands on a rag. "It's a rough neighborhood. A girl has to be prepared." "Don't lie to me, Sasha." Kenneth's voice was low, dangerous despite his injury. He reached out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was weak, but his intent was clear. "Victor Moretti just tried to execute me. I need to know who is stitching me up. Are you Feds Interpol?" Sasha looked at his hand on her wrist, then up at his eyes. Her expression was unreadable. She didn't pull away. "If I were a Fed, you'd be in cuffs," she said softly. "If I were a hit man, you'd be dead. I'm the person keeping you alive. That's all you need to know right now." She gently peeled his fingers off her wrist. The contact lingered for a second too long, a strange electric charge in the quiet room. "You lost a lot of blood," she said, standing up. "I hooked you up to a saline drip." She gestured to a bag hanging from a coat rack she had dragged over. "Rest. We move again at dawn." "I can't rest," Kenneth growled, trying to push himself up again. "Victor will scour the city. He'll check the hospitals, the clinics, the back alley docks. He won't stop." "He won't find you here," Sasha said, walking to the window. She peered through the blinds, looking down at the street 3 stories below. "This building is condemned. On paper, it doesn't exist. The power is tapped from the streetlights. The water is stolen." She turned back to him. "You're safe, Kenneth. For tonight." Kenneth looked around the room. It was sparse. A single mattress in the corner, a table, a few books. No photos. No personal trinkets. It was the home of a ghost. "Who are you running from, Sasha?" he asked quietly. Sasha stiffened. She turned off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness. "Go to sleep, Valenti." Her voice came from the dark. "Or I'll drug you and make you sleep." Kenneth listened to her footsteps retreat to the far corner of the room. He heard the metallic click-clack of a weapon being stripped and cleaned. The sound was rhythmic, almost soothing to a man like him. He closed his eyes, the pain in his side a dull throb. He was the head of the most powerful crime family in the state, and his life was currently in the hands of a woman who lived in a ghost building and cleaned guns in the dark. For the first time in years, Kenneth Valenti smiled. It was a grim, bloody smile. But it was real. Morning came with the sound of rain still hammering against the window panes. Kenneth woke with a stiff neck and a mouth that tasted like cotton. The IV bag was empty. He sat up slowly, testing the stitches. They held tight. The pain had dulled to an ache. He looked around. Sasha was sitting at the small wooden table, a laptop open in front of her. She was typing furiously. On the table next to the computer sat 2 mugs of coffee and a plate of burnt toast. "You're awake," she said without looking up. "Eat. You need the carbs." Kenneth swung his legs off the couch. He felt light-headed but functional. He walked to the table using the furniture for support. He was shirtless, his torso wrapped in white bandages. He saw Sasha's eyes flick to his chest, lingering for a fraction of a second on the tattoo over his heart, the Valenti family crest, a lion holding a dagger. "What's the situation?" Kenneth asked, sliding into the chair opposite her. He took a sip of the coffee. It was terrible. Instant. Bad, Sasha said, turning the laptop screen toward him. It was a local news stream. The headline read, "Gas explosion destroys downtown diner. 3 dead." 3, Kenneth frowned. There were 3 shooters. Plus Leo and you. The news says 3 bodies found in the rubble, Sasha said. Identified as staff and patrons. The police are calling it a tragic accident due to a gas leak. Kenneth's eyes narrowed. Victor. He cleaned the scene. He burned the building down to hide the evidence of a firefight. The bodies are probably the hit men burned beyond recognition to pass as victims. Or he killed Leo to tie up loose ends, Sasha said, her voice dropping. There was a crack in her armor, then a flash of genuine guilt. Kenneth saw it. The kid. Did he get out? I don't know, Sasha whispered. I told him to run. Kenneth reached across the table. This time, he didn't grab her. He just rested his hand near hers. Victor Moretti is a butcher. If the boy is dead, it's on Victor's tab, not yours. Sasha looked at his hand, then nodded slowly. She typed a few keys and brought up a police scanner feed. They have an APB out for a John Doe seen fleeing the scene, she said, but no mention of you by name. Victor hasn't leaked that you're missing yet. He wants to find you himself before the other families smell blood in the water. He needs to confirm the kill, Kenneth said. If he announces I'm dead and I show up alive, he looks weak. He loses the crew. So we have a window, Sasha said. A small one. What's your play, boss? Kenneth leaned back. The boss title sounded strange coming from her. I have a safe deposit box at the Union Bank. Cash passports and a ledger. The ledger contains the names of every politician and judge on my payroll. It's my insurance policy. If I get that, I can burn Victor's world down. Union Bank is downtown, Sasha said, shaking her head. Too much heat. You walk in there, cameras pick you up. Victor's guys will be there in 5 minutes. I don't need to go in, Kenneth said. I need to make a call. I have a lieutenant, Salvatore Sal Rinaldi. He runs the docks. He hates Victor. If I can get Sal to retrieve the box. How do you know he hasn't flipped? Sasha asked skeptically. Sal is old school. He swore an oath to my father. He's the only one I trust. Sasha chewed her lip. She didn't like it. Fine. But we use a burner, and we keep it short. She reached into a drawer and tossed him a cheap, disposable flip phone. Kenneth dialed the number from memory. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was the toss of the coin. Ring, ring, ring. Yeah, a gruff voice answered. The wind is blowing from the North Sul, Kenneth said, using their old code. There was a long silence on the other end. Dom? Sal's voice trembled slightly. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. We heard. We thought you were in the diner. I was, Kenneth said. Victor missed. Thank God, Sal breathed. Where are you? Tell me where you are. I'll bring the boys. We'll storm the club. We'll kill that traitor tonight. I can't tell you where I am, Kenneth said, eyeing Sasha. She was watching him intensely, a hand hovering near her waist. I need you to go to the bank, Sal. Get the package. Meet me at the old shipyard warehouse, 4. Midnight. Warehouse 4. Got it. I'll be there, Dom. Stay low. The line went dead. Kenneth closed the phone and looked at Sasha. He's in. Sasha didn't look relieved. She looked worried. He agreed too fast. He's loyal. Everyone is loyal until the gun is at their head, Sasha muttered. She stood up and walked to a duffel bag in the corner. She unzipped it, revealing a small arsenal flashbangs, extra magazines, and a collapsible tactical rifle. "What are you doing?" Kenneth asked. "Getting ready for a war," she said. "Because if you're wrong about Sal, we're walking into a trap at midnight. And if I'm right, then we get your ledger and you get your life back." She paused, looking at him. "And I go back to being a ghost. Is that what you want?" Kenneth asked. "To disappear again?" Sasha picked up the rifle, checking the scope. "People like me don't get happy endings, Valenti. We just get into missions." Kenneth stood up, ignoring the twinge in his side. He walked over to her, standing close enough to smell the vanilla soap again. The tension in the room shifted, becoming heavy, charged. "You saved my life twice," Kenneth said. "I don't even know your real name." Sasha looked up at him. Her amber eyes were guarded, but for a moment the walls came down. "It's Elena," she whispered. "My name is Elena." Kenneth tested the name on his tongue. "Elena." He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. She leaned into his touch for a millisecond before pulling back her defenses, slamming back into place. "Don't," she said, her voice shaky. "We have work to do." She turned away, shoving a magazine into the rifle with a loud click. The day passed in a blur of preparation. Elena Sasha moved with a chaotic efficiency, drawing maps of the shipyard, planning escape routes, checking wind directions. Kenneth watched her, fascinated. She was a weapon, honed and sharp, hiding in plain sight. By 11:00 p.m. they were in the Honda Civic, driving through the rain toward the docks. The city was dark, the industrial skeletons of cranes looming against the night sky. Kenneth checked the pistol she had given him, a Sig Sauer P229. It felt heavy and reassuring in his hand. They parked a mile away and hiked in through the perimeter fence. The rain masked their sound. They reached Warehouse 4, a rusting hulk of corrugated metal near the water's edge. "I'll take the high ground," Elena whispered, pointing to a catwalk that ran along the ceiling of the warehouse. "You go in. If Sal is alone, I stay hidden. If he brought friends, you rain hell," Kenneth finished. She nodded. Her eyes met his in the dark. "Don't die on me, Valenti. I put a lot of work into those stitches." She vanished into the shadows, climbing a maintenance ladder with silent grace. Kenneth straightened his jacket. He took a deep breath, pushing the pain aside. He stepped out into the open, walking into the vast, empty space of the warehouse. In the center, under a single hanging light bulb, stood a black sedan. Leaning against it was a heavy-set man in a trench coat. Salvatore Rinaldi. He was holding a metal briefcase. "Dom," Sal called out, his voice echoing. He took a step forward, opening his arms. "You look like hell, boss." Kenneth didn't smile. He stopped 20 feet away. "Show me the ledger, Sal." Sal paused. He looked nervous. He licked his lips. "It's in the case, Dom. Come on, let's get you out of here. I got a boat waiting." "Open the case," Kenneth commanded. Sal hesitated. Suddenly, a red laser dot appeared on the center of Kenneth's chest. Kenneth froze. "I'm sorry, Dom," Sal whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "They have my daughter, Victor. He has my little girl." From the shadows of the shipping containers, surrounding them, a dozen men emerged. They were heavily armed, and stepping out from behind the sedan, clapping slowly, was Victor Moretti. He wore a pristine white suit, a stark contrast to the grime of the warehouse. "Bravo." Victor sneered, his smile like a shark's. "The king returns, only to die in a rat hole." Kenneth didn't look at Victor. He didn't look at Sal. He looked up imperceptibly toward the dark rafters above. "Do it, Elena," he thought. And then the lights went out. The darkness was absolute. When Elena cut the power, she didn't just flip a switch, she severed the main line. The warehouse plunged into an inky, suffocating blackness. For a split second, the only sound was the intake of breath from a dozen men. Then chaos erupted. Crack, boom. 2 flashbangs dropped from the catwalks above, detonated in mid-air. The blinding white light seared the retinas of everyone facing the center of the room. The deafening bang shattered the silence, disorienting Victor's men. Kenneth, who had closed his eyes the moment the lights died, opened them. He was the only one on the ground floor who could see, albeit through the strobing after-images of the explosion. He didn't run away. He ran forward. He dove toward Sal, tackling the older man behind the engine block of the sedan, just as the air filled with lead. Victor's men were spraying and praying, firing blindly into the dark. Sparks showered from the metal beams as bullets ricocheted wildly. "Stay down!" Kenneth roared over the gunfire. Above them, the distinct rhythmic thwip-thwip of a suppressed rifle began to sing. Elena wasn't firing blindly. She was perched high in the rafters, wearing night vision goggles she had pulled from that duffel bag. She was the angel of death, and she was picking them off one by one. A gunman near the crate yelled, "Above us! She's in the—" His voice was cut short by a wet thud. He dropped. "Suppressing fire on the roof!" Victor screamed from somewhere in the dark. A storm of bullets tore through the catwalks. Kenneth saw the muzzle flashes illuminating the warehouse like a strobe light disco from hell. "Dom?" Sal wheezed, clutching his chest. He hadn't been quick enough. A stray bullet had caught him during the initial volley. "Dom, the boat, behind the warehouse. It's keyed." "Save your breath, Sal," Kenneth said, pressing his hand against his lieutenant's chest. It was wet. "Listen to me." Sal gasped, grabbing Kenneth's lapel. "Victor, he didn't just want the territory. He's selling the routes to the cartels. He's going to flood the city with things we never touched. You have to stop him." "I will," Kenneth promised, his voice hard as iron. "But first we get you out." "No." Sal smiled, blood staining his teeth. "I'm done. My daughter. Get her back, Dom. Promise me." "I promise." Sal reached into his coat, pulled out a grenade, and pulled the pin. "Go. I'll clear the path." Kenneth looked at his old friend one last time, then nodded. He scrambled on his hands and knees toward the back exit, keeping the car between him and the shooters. "Hey, over here, you traitors!" Sal screamed, rolling the grenade out from behind the car. The explosion shook the concrete foundation. Metal shrapnel screamed through the air. The blast threw 2 of Victor's men into the air and created a wall of smoke and fire. Kenneth burst through the rear door of the warehouse into the cool night air. The rain was still falling. 50 yards away, bobbing in the dark water of the Sound, was a sleek speedboat. He sprinted for it. He heard footsteps splashing behind him. He spun, raising his cig. It was Elena. She dropped from a drain pipe, landing in a crouch, her rifle slung over her back. She was breathing hard, her eyes wild. "Go, go!" she yelled. They hit the dock running. Bullets began to chip away the wood around their feet as Victor's surviving men poured out of the warehouse. Kenneth leaped into the boat, fumbling for the ignition. Elena untied the mooring rope and dove in beside him. "Start it!" she screamed, returning fire with her pistol. The engine roared to life. Kenneth slammed the throttle forward. The boat surged the bow, lifting out of the water. Bullets pinged off the engine cowling, but they were already moving too fast. They tore into the black expanse of the bay, leaving the burning warehouse and the screams of dying men behind them. Kenneth steered them toward Storsar in the open water, the wind whipping his face. He didn't look back. He just gripped the wheel until his knuckles were white. The image of Sal's bloody smile burned into his mind. They drove for an hour in silence, navigating by the lights of the distant shoreline until they reached a secluded cove miles north of the city. Kenneth cut the engine, letting the boat drift into the tall reeds. The silence that followed was heavy. "He's dead," Kenneth said, his voice flat. "He bought us time," Elena said softly. She was sitting in the stern, reloading her magazines. Her hands were shaking slightly now, the adrenaline dump. Kenneth turned to her. The moon had broken through the clouds, illuminating her face. She looked exhausted. "You had night vision," Kenneth said. "You had flashbangs. You moved on those rafters like a cat." Elena didn't answer. She holstered her gun and looked out at the water. "We need to find a place to lay low," she said. "Victor will have the Coast Guard looking for this boat by morning." "Stop," Kenneth said. He let go of the wheel and stepped toward her. The boat rocked gently. "Stop planning. Stop running. Tell me the truth." He stood over her, his presence commanding, despite his exhaustion. "You aren't a waitress, Elena. You aren't just some girl from the neighborhood who knows how to shoot. You took down a hit squad. You orchestrated a Black Ops extraction." He leaned down, his face inches from hers. "Who are you? And don't you dare lie to me again." Elena looked up at him. The defiance in her eyes wavered. She looked at the blood on his shirt, the pain in his eyes, and the raw vulnerability of a man who had lost everything in 24 hours. "You want to know," she whispered. "I have a right to know." "Fine," she said. She reached up and pulled the hair tie from her hair, letting the dark locks fall around her face. "But once I tell you there is no going back, you become part of the hunted. I'm already hunted, Elena. I'm a dead man walking." She took a deep breath. "My name isn't Elena," she said. "And it isn't Sasha." She looked him dead in the eye. "My name is Scarlett Walker, and until 6 months ago I was a wet work specialist for the CIA's Special Activities Division. I was the government's favorite assassin, until they decided I knew too much." Kenneth stared at her. The water lapped gently against the hull of the boat. CIA? Kenneth repeated the absurdity of it, warring with the reality of what he had seen. "You're a spook." "I was a spook," Scarlett corrected. "I was a cleaner. When an operation went bad, when a foreign asset needed to be removed quietly, they sent me. No records, no backup, just me." She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering slightly in the cold night air. 6 months ago, I was sent to eliminate a target in Berlin. Routine. But when I got there, the target wasn't a terrorist. He was a journalist. He had proof that my handler, my boss, was selling state secrets to the cartels, to people like Victor Moretti. Kenneth's eyes widened. The pieces were starting to click together. "I didn't take the shot," Scarlett continued. "I aborted the mission. I tried to bring the journalist in. But my handler, he was watching. He detonated the safe house, killed the journalist, framed me for it. They put a burn notice on me. Every intelligence agency in the world has a kill-on-sight order for Scarlett Walker." "So you ran," Kenneth said. "I ran. I came back to the States, changed my name, got a job in a diner where nobody looks you in the eye. I just wanted to disappear." "Then why save me?" Kenneth asked. "You risked everything. If Victor's men had fingerprinted you, If the police had found you, because of Victor. Scarlett said, her voice turning venomous. I've been tracking the network that my handler was selling to, trying to find a way to clear my name. The trail led to Seattle, to the Moretti crew. She stood up, pacing the small space of the boat. I was watching the diner because Victor's men eat there. I was gathering intel. Then you walked in, and I saw the way they looked at you. I knew they were going to kill you. You could have let them, Kenneth said. One less mob boss in the world. Scarlett stopped pacing. She looked at him, and her expression softened. I could have, she admitted. But then I saw you give that homeless guy outside your sandwich. I saw you tip the busboy who dropped the water. You aren't like them, Kenneth. You're a criminal, yes. But you have a code. Victor doesn't. If Victor takes over, he connects with the people who burned me. He brings the cartels here. He turns this city into a war zone. She stepped closer to him, her hand resting on his chest, right over the tattoo. I saved you because you are the only man powerful enough to stop Victor. And if we stop Victor, maybe, just maybe, I can find the proof I need to get my life back. Kenneth looked at her. He saw the waitress who poured coffee. He saw the soldier who sniped men from the rafters. He saw the terrified woman who had lost everything. We're quite a pair, Kenneth murmured. A fallen king and a rogue ghost. We're all we've got, Scarlett said. Kenneth covered her hand with his. The connection between them was no longer just about survival. It was forged in blood and secrets. We need to get off this boat, Kenneth said, his mind shifting back to strategy. Sal said Victor has his daughter. If we want to break Victor, we have to save the girl. Do you know where they would keep her? There's an old cannery on the west side, Kenneth said. Victor uses it for interrogations. It's soundproof, isolated, heavily guarded, a fortress. Scarlett smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful smile. I like fortresses. They have vents. We need weapons, Kenneth said. Real ones. And armor. I have a stash, Scarlett said. Not far from here. Buried in a storage unit under the name of a dead cat. Lead the way, Scarlett Walker. They ditched the boat in the reeds and hiked to the main road. They stole a truck, hot wiring it was child's play for Scarlett, and drove to a self-storage facility on the outskirts of town. Inside Unit 404, Scarlett pulled back a tarp to reveal a crate. Inside were assault rifles, Kevlar vests, C4 explosives, and high-tech surveillance gear. You really were prepared for World War III, Kenneth noted, picking up a heavy, tactical vest. I told you, she said, strapping a knife to her thigh. I don't plan on dying easy. As they geared up, the atmosphere in the small metal unit shifted. They were standing close, adjusting straps and checking chambers. Kenneth reached out to tighten the strap on her shoulder. His fingers grazed her neck. Scarlett froze. She looked up at him. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a raw, magnetic pull. Kenneth, she breathed. He didn't speak. He just leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, fueled by the brush with death and the looming violence. It tasted of rain and fear and hope. Scarlett melted into him, her hands gripping the lapels of his ruined suit, pulling him closer. For a moment, the world outside didn't exist. There was no Victor, no CIA, no hitmen. Just the two of them, two broken people, finding jagged pieces that fit together. Kenneth pulled back, resting his forehead against hers. When this is over, he whispered, you don't have to be a ghost anymore. I'll protect you. I have resources. I can give you a new life. Scarlett looked at him, sadness in her eyes. "Let's survive the night first, Dom." She pulled away, grabbing an M4 carbine. She racked the slide. "Let's go get Sal's daughter." The West Side Cannery was a rusting tomb, jutting out into the Puget Sound, shrouded in freezing fog. It was 2:00 a.m., and the silence was heavy, broken only by the slap of dark water against rotting pilings. Kenneth killed the engine of the stolen truck a quarter-mile out. Inside the cab, the tension was thick. Scarlett, geared up in a Kevlar vest that made her small frame look lethal, lowered her thermal binoculars. "3 guards," she said, her voice tight. "2 at the gate, 1 walking the docks. They're sloppy." "Victor thinks I'm dead." Kenneth checked the load in his M4. "He thinks he's already won." "The girl is the priority," Scarlett reminded him, gripping his arm. "If Victor panics, he'll use her as a shield. We have to separate them." "I'll take the front door," Kenneth said, his eyes hard. "I'll be the distraction. You go high. Find the vents. Don't drop until I draw their fire." "That's a suicide run, Valenti." "I'm already a ghost, remember." They moved out, shadows merging with the fog. Kenneth approached the main gate with terrifying purpose. The 2 guards were laughing at a phone screen. They didn't even look up until Kenneth was 10 feet away. 2 suppressed shots coughed into the mist, and the guards crumbled. Kenneth stepped over them and kicked in the side door. The interior was a cavernous nightmare of industrial steel and floodlights. In the center of the concrete floor, Victor Moretti paced like a caged animal, screaming into a cell phone, while 6 heavily armed men stood watch. In the corner, tied to a chair near a dormant industrial fish grinder, sat Lily. She was gagged, her eyes wide with terror. Kenneth stepped into the halo of light. "Hang up the phone, Victor." Victor spun around, dropping the device. For a second, he looked like he was seeing a phantom. Then his shark-like grin returned, strained and manic. "Dom," Victor sneered, signaling his men to raise their weapons. "You just don't know when to quit. You came all this way to die in a fish factory." "I came for the girl," Kenneth said, walking steadily forward, his rifle lowered. "Let her go, Vic. This is between us." "It's all mine now." Victor laughed, the sound echoing off the metal vat mixers. "The roots, the money, the city. You're obsolete, old man. You and your card belong in a museum." Kenneth stopped walking. He glanced up imperceptibly. "I'm never alone." A metal grate clattered high in the ceiling. Victor's eyes flicked up. In that split second of distraction, Kenneth raised his rifle. Crack thwip. Kenneth dropped 2 guards before they could pull their triggers. The remaining 4 scattered behind the metal vats, spraying bullets wildly. Sparks showered the floor as Kenneth dove behind a forklift. "Now!" Kenneth roared into his comms. High above, Scarlett detached from the shadows. She rappelled down a cable with breathtaking speed, landing silently on the catwalk, directly above Lily. A guard, realizing the girl was unguarded, lunged toward her with a knife. Scarlett didn't hesitate. A single shot from her perch took him in the neck. She dropped to the floor, slicing Lily's ropes and pulling the sobbing child behind the heavy machinery. "Stay down!" Scarlett ordered, shielding the girl with her body. On the main floor, the firefight was brutal and short. Kenneth popped up from cover, his movements precise, fueled by a cold, quiet rage. He suppressed the remaining gunmen, forcing them to keep their heads down while he advanced. Victor, realizing his men were falling, grabbed a submachine gun and fired blindly, screaming in frustration. "Kill him! He's just one man!" "I'm the man who made you, Victor," Kenneth yelled back. He stepped out from cover, ignoring the bullets chipping the concrete at his feet, and took down the last bodyguard with a clean headshot. Victor's gun clicked empty. He stared at Kenneth, panic finally shattering his arrogance. He threw the weapon and turned to run toward the back office. Kenneth didn't shoot. He sprinted, tackling Victor into a metal shelving unit. Tools clattered to the floor as Kenneth hauled the younger man up by his white lapels and slammed him against the fish grinder. "We were brothers," Kenneth growled, his forearm crushing Victor's throat. "I gave you everything. The world changed, Dom." Victor choked, clawing at Kenneth's arm. "I could have cut you in. We could have been kings. You broke the oath." Kenneth drew the Sig Sauer from his waistband, pressed the barrel under Victor's chin, and pulled the trigger. The shot was final. Victor Moretti slid to the floor, his white suit stained red, his ambition ending in the dirt. Kenneth stood over him, breathing heavily. The silence that followed was deafening. It was over. The war was done. He turned to see Scarlett, leading Lily toward the rear exit. The little girl was safe, her face buried in Scarlett's tactical vest. Kenneth walked over, kneeling to look Lily in the eye. "Your dad was a hero, Lily," he said, his voice rough. "He loved you. He died making sure you were safe." Lily nodded mutely, tears spilling down her cheeks. Kenneth stood and looked at Scarlett. Sirens began to wail in the distance, getting louder by the second. "Take her to St. Mary's Orphanage on the 12th, Kenneth said. "Mother Superior owes me. She'll be safe." "And you?" Scarlett asked, her amber eyes searching his. "The cops will be here in 2 minutes." "Kenneth Valenti died in a diner explosion," he said with a grim smile. "The man standing here is just a ghost." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the key to the Union Bank deposit box, the ledger, the cash, the passports. He pressed it into her hand. "Take it," he commanded. "The ledger has enough dirt to buy your freedom. Use the money. Get your life back, Scarlett Walker." She stared at the key. "This is your empire." "I don't want an empire," Kenneth whispered. He leaned in, kissing her hard, a desperate, searing goodbye that tasted of rain and gunpowder. "I just want you to live." He pulled back. "Go, before I change my mind." Scarlett hesitated for one heart-wrenching second. Then she nodded. She grabbed Lily's hand. "Goodbye, boss," she whispered. She kicked open the door and vanished into the fog, taking Kenneth's heart and his fortune with her. Kenneth turned back to the carnage. He pulled out a cigarette, lit it with steady hands, and took a deep drag. He stood alone in the center of the warehouse, waiting for the flashing lights to wash over him. For the first time in his life, he had nothing, and he had never felt more free. Talk about a wild ride. From a suicidal Mafia don waiting for the end in a greasy diner to a high-octane war alongside a rogue CIA assassin, Kenneth Valenti's story proves that sometimes rock bottom is just the foundation for a hell of a comeback. It's a brutal reminder that the people who save us aren't always knights in shining armor. Sometimes they are the broken souls hiding in the shadows right next to us. Kenneth and Scarlett found something real in the middle of a bloodbath, even if they had to let it go to survive. If this gritty tale of betrayal, redemption, and impossible romance had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button. Share this video with anyone who loves a dark thriller. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the next story. Thanks for watching.